Welcome, Wargamers. Join your hosts, Bonko and Monty, two Canadian wargaming enthusiasts, as we explore all aspects of tabletop wargaming. We roll dice, talk tactics, share hobby hacks, and explore new tabletop systems, all on the Trident Wargaming Podcast.
Trident Wargaming. Build it, paint it, play it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Trident Wargaming. I am joined with two guests today. We've got Arthur from Deepstrike Studios back.
What up? Thanks for having me.
And then we got a first-time guest. We got that sweet Scotty B.
Howdy.
So we're going to be jumping all the way to the 41st millennium today, going through some of that 40k action. There's been a lot of developments since we last were on talking about 40k. We had local events kicking off. We had some league ideas popping up, a whole bunch of stuff. I guess to kick things off first, we will do a little bit of hobby time. What have you guys been working on lately? I guess we'll pick on you, Arthur. I know you got a lot of stuff on the go.
Well, for the last few months, because teaching as a profession literally takes everything from you, I have done nothing. Heresy came out. I painted most of the box set, right? To like 70% done, and then I just had to drop it. And I had a little bit of free time. I played in a tournament recently, and I won one. And I didn't realize how down on 40k I was because I wasn't winning. But more on that later. And that really re-inspired me to get into the hobby again. And so I looked at my works in progress, and I asked myself, what sparks joy? And the Avatar looked back at me, and that the Avatar Arcane is what sparked joy, and the Heresy stuff did not. But I painted up the Avatar. Like, what a cool model! I think this is the third or fourth time I've tried to paint an Avatar from like that original mini, which I'm sure was cool back in the day. That Forge World one that came out in the 2000s, whenever. And I don't think my painting skill was up to prime when I tried to paint the lava on that one. I got about halfway through and I said, this isn't it. But this time around, a mixture of Duncan in his new painting studio, his new little bit YouTube channel, had a really good tutorial for how to do some of the lava effects. And I think my skill was finally ready to do what I wanted for what I envisioned for this model. So I painted up the Avatar. That was super cool. I got some more Eldar stuff on the table. I want to polish off that army so Scott will stop making fun of me for bringing subpar choices. And then I might be looking at another Xenos race in the near future.
Might be.
Probably.
Could be.
That sounds like heresy. The God Emperor is turning on the Golden Throne as we speak.
He's trading one heresy for another.
Yeah, he is.
You know what? It might be for, the greater good.
Might be.
We'll leave it at that.
Wow. Well, Scott, what have you been working on lately?
I have a bad habit with my painting where, a lot of folks I know you get new releases and you're inspired to paint that new stuff, that new hotness that you pick up, or maybe some rules come out and you're like, or change and you're like, oh yeah, I really want to get some of those models painted up because they're good now, and I kind of want to get them on the table, see what they're like. I'm the opposite of that. I run into this issue where right about when a model is at its least desirable, both on the tabletop and off, is suddenly when I decide that they look cool and I want to paint them. So I've been actually working on some Necrons the last little while, which, if you play 40k, Necrons as a army aren't in a bad spot. But the Necrons that I've been painting have been like my Doomsday Arc and my Canoptic Doomstalkers and some Canoptic Spiders, none of which are terribly viable in a competitive sense, and all of which are incredibly frustrating to paint because Necrons, the whole aesthetic, it's got a lot of surfaces, a lot of fiddly bits, all of which, if you're detail oriented and you're painting like I am, then they're a nightmare to paint. But they've just, with me, and I think with a lot of folks, painting is something you kind of have to be inspired to do. Otherwise, you do a bad job, or you're never going to be happy with it anyway. You're never going to get through it. I paint quite slowly as well, so I kind of just have to do it when the iron's hot, when the lightning is striking, and that's what I've been working on. So
Nice. Nothing wrong with that. I definitely, I'll echo that point. You know, you have to be in that right mindset for painting, or else it's just not the way. And it will feel like a chore, and you won't want to do it. I've been there before.
You're probably there this summer.
Yeah, yeah. By the end of that terrain, it was a big push, and I was feeling pretty burnt out, and so burnt out that I decided to paint a 3K army in 3.5 weeks, just to really fuck with myself. So,
well, that's minor for you compared to some of the projects you've done lately. That was taking time off, really.
Yeah.
Now, Bill, I know you're probably gonna tell us about your heresy or whatever you're painting right now, but I want to interlude for one quick second.
Sure.
Is there any model for all of us here? This question goes out to everyone, and maybe the viewers at home. Is there any single model out there, new release or anything else that like would inspire you to paint? Is there one out there? A new release, something that you've always liked, like anything. Scotty, you first, then Bill.
Let me see what's on my wish list. Okay, so Arthur knows this actually, because I've probably talked about it a few times. Again, going back to my Necrons, one of the very few, like I've got a massive Necron army, and one of the few models that I don't own for it, hilariously, is the Silent King. So it's something that it's getting to that point where maybe in another 6 months or so he'll be bad, and then I'll want to paint him if the rules go that way, kind of thing. Another one that's kind of always on the top of my mind, and I think I've even talked to Bill about this a bit before, is I've always really wanted to do some Thousand Suns, but I've never taken the plunge because I just don't feel like I need another army right now. But I'm kind of evolving myself a little bit right now to the idea that maybe I don't always need to buy an army just to get some models. If I want to paint something, I can just buy it and paint it and enjoy it for what it is. It's a hobby as well as a game, and I know people tend to fall on one side of the other of that line. But now that I've been in it as long as I have, I kind of feel like maybe a little of both is okay.
It's not a bad...
Sounds like heresy to me.
No, 40k Thousand Suns. Sorry about that. No heresy.
What about the Thousand Suns? Like, is there like, it's just a general aesthetic, or is there one model that
I think it must be the aesthetic. Yeah, no, it's actually like it does cross, a lot of the lines. I think I'm most attracted to the regular rubric Marines. But like the Terminators are spicy, the Sorcerers are spicy. Magnus, I like the model, but I don't know that he's one that I'd want to buy just to paint. I don't know if I like him that much. But most of the rest of their range, even the Zangors, I kind of have an eye on. So,
do have a
Bill,
cool
what about
range. For models, hey, that one awesome model.
It doesn't even have to be a GW model. Like, cool if it is, but if it's not, that's okay.
Bill's got to have his eyes on a Be'lakor nowadays.
The new Be'lakor, I would like to really paint. I think that model would just be awesome.
He'd look great with some hazard stripes.
Ooh, he would, wouldn't he? But believe it or not, there's I'm not a AOS guy. I used to play Warhammer Fantasy way back in the day, and
what's that?
Yeah, right. The undead characters that have always kind of made it really fun to play. There were some new ones in the AOS that dropped, and I gotta remember the name of it. I'm trying to look it up as we're talking here because I can't quite remember. But just the sculpt, I had the old pewter zombie dragon, and it was terrible to try and put together. But the new,
I didn't even know they had that in metal, because that's a big model.
It was metal.
It was
actually gnarly. I had a Vampire Counts army for a long time.
It was gnarly, yeah. What is it again? There's a guy.
It's one of those Mortarks, maybe?
So it would be, if I had to pick one, because I really would like to redo those undead ones, But if I was going to pick just a model to paint, I'd start with Nagash.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nagash is gorgeous.
Supreme Lord of the Undead when they
several times thought about buying him.
Oh, just the model alone. Yeah, it's pretty legit, man. Pretty legit.
What would he be under these days? He's not Night Haunt. What is?
He's also like, I feel like Nagash, like not only is it a beautiful model, but like for me anyway, he holds a special spot because he was one of the very first of the kind of new era of GW showpiece models, right?
Yeah.
When they first started doing the end time stuff and bringing in those gigantic centerpiece models.
I think he might have been like the first one.
Yeah.
Maybe he came after Imperial Knights, but like I actually remember one of the very first competitive tournaments I went to when I came back to 40k as an adult was an Onslaught, and they used to do this last year when they used to do 40k one day and they would do Fantasy the next, and sometimes at the same time. And I remember Ward talking about who runs Onslaught, if you're not familiar, or used to. I don't know if they're still doing anything. He was talking about announcing the winners of Fantasy, and he was like, and the number one place goes to, and it was, he said Nagash, because Nagash was just fucking like batshit insane rules wise.
Yeah.
But it's funny how things come full circle like that. Yeah, I'm looking at him right now. He's a gorgeous model.
Absolutely gorgeous, yeah.
That or
I mean, it's funny because we've had.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was going to say that or that Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon that they came out with in plastic would be my next big pick, just because it would be a lot of nostalgic feels, right? Painting that thing. I played Fantasy through junior high, so it'd be a nice little flashback there.
Kind of a full circle thing for you, eh?
Yeah.
I was just going to say with Nagash, it's kind of funny actually that we've now had years of this where GW's been building these big cool models for a lot of factions. Hopefully, I think eventually all of them. And yet, even after all of the hits and misses they've had over these years, he's still probably one of the best. I think he's just a spectacular model. So
it's crazy because Games Workshop, they seem to be doing it right. I know a long time ago they were like, we just want to make models that are cool. So even if you don't play the system, you're just gonna want to buy the model and paint it and whatever. And I was like, bullshit. I was like, no one's gonna buy the model unless they're not playing that game. That was kind of my mentality. And like, well, just with this conversation, so you know what? Maybe they were onto something, because there's been several models I've seen that I'm like, oh, I'd like to paint that. That'd be kind of cool.
I picked up that Sylvaneth Alariel the Everqueen because I love that model.
Yeah.
Oh wow!
Do you think you'd ever, Arthur? Do you think you'd ever get some Tau models just to paint them and not play them?
Well, and this is where the greater good starts, right? I have eyed up the Ghost Keel since that model came out in fucking 2016. It must have been 2016. It's
been a good number of years.
This time.
I think the second newest Tau model, because the Commander is probably the newest. Maybe they have other characters brew. But if we're talking 40k in a nutshell, I love the Ghost Keel. I don't know what it is. That model specifically is getting me into Tau because I want to paint it up.
But like getting you into them to paint.
No, we're playing. We're going full weeb shit. We're gonna relive my junior high Gundam days.
There you go.
I don't think you can win tournaments with Tau playing like a sister's player.
Passively? No, I think for Tau you just have to go first.
Oh.
Or with anyone. But if we're talking about models that aren't Tau and aren't GW, Scale 75, which is a paint company, has this model called The Choice, and I've linked it here in the Discord, and maybe we'll throw that in the description or something else or whatever. But it's like this angel kind of thing. It's kind of what I envisioned Celestine would actually be like.
Let's take a look at
I think that model just kicks ass. I want to paint that. But not for 50 euros.
She got that Valkyrie thing going on.
Yep, that's definitely... That's niche fetish for sure, right?
I have some old D&D models, like some of their nicer ones that I could find back in the day that I painted up and used in 40k way back way back when. I'm sure any of us who've been in the hobby long enough probably have at least a few like that you spotted a model and thought, going way back.
Those Real
This actually
Partha?
would fit pretty good. Yeah, well.
Real old school.
Yeah, really, really old. Yeah.
So I guess I'll leave this out to the comment section. If you're listening right now, type in the comments. What's one model that you would love to paint, that would inspire you to paint? But I think we're going back here to Bill. Bill, your current hobby progress. What are you working on?
Currently, it's kind of a mixed bag. I'm obviously still rocking out on Heresy, trying to do all the finishing details now. Getting that army from what would technically be, like your tabletop standard up to above tabletop, which is kind of where all the time comes.
I think the term now is battle ready, battle ready, and parade ready.
Oh, parade ready. That sounds pretty legit.
And if you're me, second place ready.
Oh man.
You just gotta find the right place, Arthur.
That's right.
Fucking second.
Find your place, the second place. If that's where you belong, that's it. Other than that, I'm actually finishing up getting all my pieces together for a bolt action table. There's an event for bolt action December 3rd, so I'm doing a table up for that event so I can take it down there. Just because, sponge for punishment, and then the upcoming doubles tournament on the 27th will be popping off. So I'm kind of getting everything ready for that, which will not as much work. It's mainly missions and just bringing everything down. So
awesome.
Should be good. Speaking of events, though, I guess we'll kick off with some meat and potatoes. We recently attended Hallowtide 2022. It was run by Scott, and it was a lot of fun. It was, you know what? I'm going to let you explain it, just because there were some unique things that happened in it, and may as well hear it right from you.
Yeah. I think my goal with Hallowtide was I kind of sat down and I asked myself what I, as a player, would want from a tournament. The tournament scene's kind of come back post-COVID. I mean, it's in the process of coming back, I guess. But we have seen a good number of events this year, and I think there's still churning out, at least as far as I can tell. But I find that events, understandably, are quite formulaic, at least in 40k. I can't speak to AOS or 30k as much. But in 40k, you have a very, I think, accepted system that you use, and I think that system's great. But I do think that there is an opportunity to flex a little bit here and there that maybe a lot of event organizers don't take. And some of those things are really small, but they're quality of life issues for players. And some of those things are just a little more fun. And with the Halloween season and the fact that, there's all the hullabaloo around that holiday, I thought that would be a great time to try to throw in some fun kind of tricks for the players to kind of work around. And so that's what Hallowtide was all about. It was still a fairly standard tournament. It was an ITC tournament. But I threw in a couple curveballs. So for starters, I had reduced the actual the points value for the event to 1850, which if you're a long-time 40k player, you probably are familiar with, but it hasn't really been common throughout the 8th and the 9th editions. It was kind of the standard way back in 5th, 6th. And I found back then games were faster anyhow, but it was something I was kind of considering, because I know that nowadays a lot of events do struggle a little bit with time. 40k games take a couple hours. I mean, especially when you get into a really good one, right? And events can struggle to really push players through their 2.5, 3 hour time slots, and then do 3-4 games a day. So I thought, well, let's bump that down to 1850, because 1850 is like the value at which 40k it feels like a 2,000 point game, but you've really forced players to really tune that list down just that little bit extra, shave off a few things here and there. And surprisingly, 1850 point games actually play like a good 20 plus minutes faster, which a lot of times when I've run into it, and I think you guys probably have too in tournaments, that 20 minutes at the end of the round is where sometimes players bump up against the clock a bit, right? So that was one thing. And then the other thing I decided to kind of go with, because I wanted, running Hallowtide, hopefully in the future, I kind of want to have at least one curveball every time. This year, I decided to go with the old standby, which is trying out sideboards. So I gave players a 300-point sideboard that they could put together, that they could swap into their list or their army at the start of any given game. I'm actually, I'd love to hear from you guys about your thoughts on sideboards in tabletop games, not just 40k, whatever you might play, because it's obviously a standard kind of thing in some card games, but it's long been discussed in 40k. There's a lot of proponents for it. There's a lot of people who don't like it, but it was something I wanted to try out. And I think for this event, actually, it was funny how very little people actually really talked about it. There were a couple players who used it a lot, and a couple players who hardly used it at all, and some in between. But there certainly wasn't much buzz around it at the event as much as you might see when it gets discussed online.
Well, that's fair to say. I know for the event itself, just due to my obviously state of playing 40k, I actually didn't use my sideboard actually at all. Also because I didn't really want to lose my mop, and I didn't want to kind of lose any of my other units to be able to take that Disco Lord. But the idea behind it was actually pretty fun, just because it was nice to know I had an option if I ran into something where I needed that Disco Lord more than the Master Possession.
I have toyed with the idea of a sideboard at events for I want to say like a decade, but I haven't been running events and playing at events for 10 years. But as long as I've been playing 40k, I've thought about that, because when we talk about Magic the Gathering as a competitive game, you lose game 1, game 2, you get to sideboard, and if you lose game 1 because of a counter pick, you get to bring something in that's going to help you in that matchup. And I played a lot of competitive 7th. And competitive 7th I loved, but it really felt bad when you came up against the one thing that your army was bad against. Maybe that was an invisible Death Star, or maybe that was a deep striking army that you actually had some interceptor or whatever. And I always said, if you could sideboard against that, kind of like War Machine does, where you get to build 2 lists, that you could prevent some of those feels bad moments and feel like you always had a chance to beat everything. So I really commend Scotty for making a tournament with a sideboard. And I did get to use my sideboard. I sideboarded in some high volume shooting instead of high value shooting, and I got to bring it in one matchup, and it did everything I wanted it to. It helped clear up a weakness that I had, and it worked great. I think sideboarding is a wonderful mechanic. I wish more tournaments used it. I love the idea of it. So props to you, Scotty, for bringing that in.
It was just kind of, like I said, it was a fun thing that I wanted to try out. And thankfully, the people who attended the event were pretty receptive of it. But it was definitely the riskier one because, messing with the point value a little bit was kind of just whatever. But the sideboard was something that I knew it had the potential to, be problematic. And I think realistically, probably there were people who didn't like it that just didn't sign up. So that's that. But I thought, let's try it out. And I also think that, when you've got ideas like that, you kind of want to put proof to concept to actually try it out so that other event organizers might have something to think about or to see how somebody else did it and if it did or didn't work. My main thing with it, I know probably the most common argument against it for 40k is that it helps armies that are already be good or that are already good be better, and armies that are bad probably don't get as much out of it, which I think is still fair in 9th, but I think with the way 9th is now, where the parity between armies is probably as close as it's been in a long time.
Unless you're Admech.
That now is a good time. And I also think, and this is actually something that clearly GW agrees on, judging by some of their recent job postings. And something I talked to you about a little bit, Arthur, was that I actually think sideboarding is not even just a counter for armies. It's something that you can consider when playing missions, which is the other thing about Hallowtide that was a little different, but I think it was actually a really impactful change that I would really love for other tournaments to do. And that is that the missions in 9th edition are incredibly important to how the game goes. Lots of armies hate certain missions or love certain missions, and they have to play sometimes different missions incredibly differently, especially versus different opponents. And there is, I think, more and more people in 40k coming around to the realization that the missions are maybe more important than people have given them credit in the past for determining, winners and losers. And so, the sideboard opened up that opportunity for somebody to be like, oh, for this mission, actually, I would want my army to look a little bit more like this. But in these other missions, I wouldn't want that. But, the main issue with tournaments, at least that I've been to, is that the vast majority of them do not publish their missions ahead of time. They give you a pack the day of, or release them the day of, hypothetically to stop people from tooling for the missions. And in the past, I think that was fine. Nowadays, I'm concerned, especially in, little RTTs with only, say, 3 games, or even GTs with, only 5, maybe 6 games. There's 9 missions, and some of them, they force big changes on some armies. And
sure,
so I
scout, can't move in advance, that kind of stuff.
Well, and, just even the layout of the table and where, how many objectives are in no man's land, how far are they from the deployment zones, how much does your army have to split out, what is the mission specific objective. All of these things can, for some armies, make a big difference. And so what I did was, for Hallowtide, I published the missions right in the player's pack right from the get-go. You knew exactly what mission was being played for each game, and also you had that sideboard to let you kind of, if you wanted to, you could tool for a certain mission. Of course, everybody was on the same level there, and I really do think that, again, it goes back to, well, does that just help some armies more than others? I would argue it probably helps the weakest armies the most, because the strongest armies are the ones that tend to change the least for the missions because they already play them really well. That's probably a strong piece of their win rate, So that was kind of the other thing that I did with Hallowtide, which was actually kind of more subtle compared to the other stuff. But it's probably the number one thing I think that events should lean into, and it's also the easiest change.
Definitely could be interesting keeping things fresh and a little bit dynamic too when you're building, especially talking about how many different missions there are and how impactful they can be. I think there is a benefit to having I'd like to try something similar to that even in 30k, just for just to kind of switch things up. I know we've been talking about dabbling with progressive scoring in some of the missions for events, which just put a whole different spin on it. There's currently a mission, Dominion, that does play like that anyways, but it's the only 1 out of 6, so I think focusing on stuff like that is important to just keep your armies fresh and not one-dimensional, because it's, with Heresy right now, it's at that point of just kill your opponent, table them, and you'll win, where I really like the idea of 9th and having secondaries and being able to limit your interaction with the opponent's army, especially if it's scary and can just crush you. That's kind of a nice thing to be able to do. So it's definitely cool to see. It was neat to see how it worked at the event. So
yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. From a player's perspective, Bill, how was playing at a tournament for 40k? It's been a while for you.
It has been a long time. It was good. Had I not stayed up so late the night before painting and gotten up early and painted even some more, it probably would have been a lot better. I would have been able to stick out all 3. I ended up taking a bye round 3, so you go home and have a nap because I was just beat.
I think you should relate your Saturday morning shenanigans, I think, a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, what happened?
think
Why
that-
why were you up so late, up so early? What happened?
It was wild. So I ended up going to bed like 1:30, and I was painting my Master of Possession, going through my list, having to make sure, do I have everything I need? Going through, and I'm like, oh my god, I actually took 3 obliterators, not just 2. I have 2 painted, and 1 is not painted. This is at 1:30 in the morning, and I'm supposed to play the next day at 8:30, 9. And
Nice.
then I also noticed that, oh, look at this accursed Terminator squad, and going through all the options, right? I'm a big WYSIWYG player. It's been like just drilled, to my head for the past 20 whatever years. So it's just, that's what I like to play. That's the standard I play at. Going through, and I'm like, wow, I have 9 Terminators, and 6 of them have accursed weapons. And I'm looking at all my Iron Warrior, Heresy, Cataphractii terms, and they've all got power fists and chain fists, and I'm like, oh fuck, like this isn't gonna work. So I ended up having to scour through bits, a couple little, caches of highly sought after stuff, and came up with 6 power swords, and painted 6 power swords in the morning. Rocked out that one obliterator in the morning, and as I was, mad dashing downstairs, ripping up the stairs to pack the rest of my stuff. Got my work boots on because I knew I was going to be standing for a lot of time. And as I'm running up the stairs, my Master of Possession slid off my books and landed on the stairs right before my boot hit that step. And, I'm 270 pounds rolling up the stairs. That Master of Possession is no more. So that was kind of a real shit start to the morning. Had to randomly just grab like a sorcerer type guy because there's no coming back from that.
That was a snake eyes on the Chaos Boon table right there.
Yeah, it was over, right?
Guy.
So yeah, this is at like 5:30 in the morning now that I've had a 4-hour sleep, and I started painting, and I did get everything done to the point where it was like tabletop, looking decent.
Yeah, it was actually quite good.
But yeah, it was a pretty rough start to the morning. Banged out 2 games, running on fumes. But again, it's been months since I've played 40k, so getting into it and suffering a little bit of Heresy edition lag. Right? I'm like, can I do this again? Is this allowed? And they're like, yeah, you can do that. I'm like, oh, sweet. Just because, I can't. There's some spots I just couldn't remember. But overall, it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, and it was nice to break the rust off. Second day, I had a little bit more, sleep, so I was a little more comfortable playing. And yeah, it was just good games. Biggest thing for me is strat management, and I guess just learning the army, all the ins and outs, because there's definitely some fine tuning I can do on the list I brought. So
yeah, I actually like just watching your games from afar as I was. I really felt, Bill, that your rules knowledge and your rules usage was great for a guy who has not had a lot of 40k to play. Some of that probably comes from the legacy of just playing tons of games, and I know you also learn tons of rule systems, so you probably have a knack for it. But I thought, I know lots of guys who getting into the hobby or whatever, getting back into the hobby, who played lots of games and struggled with their rules way more than you did. I was very impressed.
Well, that's always good to hear, because sometimes it feels you just don't want to be the pylon at the table, right? That's the biggest
Absolutely.
thing. So.
It's actually, I'll soapbox this just for a quick second here. This is actually another thing that I thought was great about it too, is that you were there playing those games and getting the reps in. I think nowadays especially and I understand why, there's a lot of work put in by players who are trying to get into the game or get better at the game to do online research and stuff like that, which I think has merit. But really, if you want to improve at this game, there's absolutely no number of Reddit threads or podcasts or whatever that you can watch and read and stuff that will really help you as much as you have to get out there and you have to play games.
Whoa.
100%.
What about my Art of War subscription?
That also helps, for sure. Absolutely. I support that. But
It will
also,
help.
play the games. Too many guys I see who just, they see stuff online which again, it has merit. But like, if you don't play games, there's so much to a game that is intuitive and that you don't realize when you're watching it from a camera that's across a room while somebody's doing a battle report, or you just don't get the angles on, or your brain just doesn't work the same way as when you're doing it. And you got to get in there, play games, and you learn so fast playing games, so much faster. And you also pick up things which I don't think you necessarily get online. So absolutely, if you're looking to get into it or get better, play games.
Yeah. The single best way to learn how to play good 40k is to lose at 40k.
It's true.
And I'd like to attribute losing at 40k a lot to my best general win at Hallowtide.
Yeah, it's true. It was a long road. Start of the year, even just started this year, Arthur was winning 1 in 10 games probably. Hey Arthur, in your last EWL League, you hardly won a game at all, didn't you?
Shut up! I won everything except for against Advac. It was awful.
And even then you got a draw. So.
Oh my god, it wasn't a draw. Don't be like that. No, I you're memeing right now, but to be honest, you really have to know what other people's bullshit is capable of. And you have to be able to measure that bullshit against your bullshit and be like, can my bullshit be out bullshit their bullshit? That's really what it comes down to.
It's how it feels. It's how it feels sometimes. You get players telling you, especially from like my point of view, I'm like, so what does it do? And he's like, I can do this, 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 and I'm like, I'm not even gonna question it. I'm sure that's probably legit.
Yeah, and like there is an issue there too, where like, maybe a guy isn't always honest with you or whatever, but that's not even. That's kind of way down the list of concerns. Hopefully, players aren't running into that problem. What you're running into, I think, more is just when you play a game, your models get into situations, good, bad, whatever. You learn from it, and then you do it again. And even when you're playing different opponents, the more times you go through that situation, the more you're going to be able to quantify how this scenario is going to play out for you. And watching battle reports and stuff oftentimes doesn't help you understand that, because unless it's a very specific maneuver or something they're showing you, you don't necessarily play like those guys play. And your opponent might not play that way either. And your terrain layout might be different. And again, camera angles can mess with your perception of what exactly is going on, etc., etc., etc. Arthur is actually a great example, because Arthur, I think you probably play the most amount of 40k games of anyone I know. You get tons of practice, and it shows.
I really? I don't know about the most. Okay. When I have time, when I'm into it, probably.
I know it's been less lately, but, when you're into it, it's a couple times a week, right?
Yeah, that's true. When I'm into it and I'm on, it's a couple times a week. But, what was really fucked is round 1, I played against Leagues of Otan. I think this might have been, one of the first weekends you could have played them. Bill, did you manage to play the dwarves?
I did not.
Scotty, have you played dwarves yet?
No, the Bryce, who brought the Votan to the tournament, he is actually the first Votan army I've gotten to see in action. So,
if you're not a recluse and you've looked at the internet, you would have known that Votan came out absolutely nutty broken, and I think they were the earliest FAQ out of any army ever from GW.
Oh, they've got to be, for sure. Well, that's not necessarily true. Custodes actually had a day 1 FAQ.
Well, so. Like a nerf that hard, though?
Yeah. Well, Custodes was a buff, so, yeah.
Yeah. And when we talk about, getting reps in, there was nothing that could have, even reading about that army didn't help.
Yep.
And
you have to experience it, right?
It was almost a loss. It was closer than I'd like to admit, because I didn't know what to do against these Votan.
Exactly.
Votan are wild. The auto wounding they have on hits is powerful. And I'm playing a T3 army, so usually someone points their gun at my armies and my armies die. But they weren't even dying in the wound phase, they were dying in the hit phase, and that felt really weird. So
I would suspect, I think a lot of people have suspected that Sisters are actually hypothetically a good Arthur was playing his Sisters of Battle this event, that they're actually apparently probably a good matchup against Votan, and yet
I mean, any of the T3 armies are probably a good matchup against Votan.
Mm-hmm.
If you are paying points for resiliency, you're wasting your money against Votan, essentially. I think I had a would you rather, but I can't remember what the part was. Like, would you rather play Votan round 1 of a tournament, and I don't remember what the was.
Well, I know what my was, but you know what? It's would you rather play Votan or would you rather drink that gingerbread shot that you bought me the other week? That was about a 75% sugar content, and the rest just pure bile.
So if anyone comes out to the club on Thursdays when we play games, or any other time where Scotty is there, it's his birthday this week, so buy him a shot.
Yeah, it's my
Very
birthday
nice.
every week, apparently.
Very nice. Oh, that's good.
Hallowtide was a great time, all in all, and I look forward to whatever the next
spectacular.
venue is spectacular.
Yeah, it is. That it is.
It's not the only thing we got going on. We're running the Edmonton Warhammer League again.
Yes.
So if you like playing 40k, if you like getting a bi-weekly matchup, you like playing against new people and new armies and getting out and meeting people, the Warhammer League is probably the best way to do that. You can check that out on Facebook, Edmonton Warhammer 40k League on Facebook is where you can find that. And I think registrations are open pretty much till the end of the month, and we're going to start, I think, December 4th, because that's the Sunday.
Yeah.
So
I think
that'll be pretty sweet.
I think Edmonton Warhammer League that you run, Arthur, is probably the most accessible semi-official 40k that you can play in this city. There's a lot of clubs that do run their own leagues, and I'm not looking to besmirch any of those. Part of the beauty of the Edmonton Warhammer League that you run is that it isn't limited to a single location, though, which I think really adds to the mystique of it, because you do get people from all over the city. You get to interact with groups other than maybe what you're used to, and also and this is mad props to you. Just from what I've experienced, you really have managed to hit that wonderful semi-comp kind of vibe with the players. You managed to have convinced them, for the most part, to play that that style, which is so elusive, where it's somewhere in between the top tables at big tournaments and people who are just doing the silliest stuff. You got guys who show up with reasonable armies, but nothing too crazy, and you meet new people and you have a good time, and the pacing's perfect. So if you're in the Edmonton area and you are looking for a semi-regular kind of 40k experience that is not limited to just the same group of 5 to 15 guys at a given club, Edmonton Warhammer League is the way to do it.
Sign-ups started yesterday. We have 16 people signed up in one day.
Awesome.
No, maybe was that this morning? I think it was this morning.
It was this morning.
So, a little bit of a gate crasher there. So I'm excited. There's other good stuff coming up at Edmonton too, though. What other events and tournaments are coming up? Nemesis is this coming weekend, so that's the Gamers Den event. They're full up. It's a 32-person tournament. Sean Ford is the co-owner of Gamers Den, and I think this is his third 40k tournament. He's been doing them every 6 months. And the first one he got a lot of flack for because there wasn't quite enough terrain. But he really stepped up on the second one, and while there was still not enough terrain, it was significantly better than the first. So I didn't sign up for this one because school's been so busy. But we got some friends going, and I did put myself on a wait list. But I'm really curious to see, and probably excited to see how he's going to continue to improve that event experience. What else is on the horizon?
That's definitely what it's all about. I know there is, I want to say there's another RTT at Red Claw on the 20th? The 20th?
Yeah,
is that a thing?
In November?
Yeah, they're full autos.
Yeah, full auto, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah. The full autos at Red Claw have been spectacular, the ones I've been able to go to.
Yeah.
They put on a great event. Also very accessible, nice, just little short one-day event. So, which are always easier for guys to hit. I know those 2-day events can sometimes be trouble, So
Yeah, but it just goes to show, like, with the system itself is in a good place. There's events probably I'd like to say every 2 to 4 weeks in Edmonton, and it's been like that the whole way this year, which is nice. It's been dark days earlier on. So.
Yeah, it's been ramping up for sure.
Yeah.
I also know I've slightly different vein, kind of going back to something kind of like Hallowtide, where not quite your regular sort of thing. I think there's a Tempest of War tournament at TAPS, if I remember right. I think it's the last weekend of November that they're running a Tempest of War one.
Yep.
So Tempest of War, for those not familiar, is the old Maelstrom cards.
Yes.
It's an entirely different alternative way to play 40k. And from what I hear, it's a really fun way to play. So if you kind of get bored of that match play style, or if you're upsetting spaghetti that Necrons get to write 95 on their score sheet without crossing over half, then Tempest of War might be a way where you can laugh at Necrons because they can't kill anything.
I think you held a Necron player to under 90, actually. Just
the secret is going first and hitting on them the entire time and telling them how beautiful they are.
Well, I mean, it was an honest judgment, so.
Yeah,
But I think December. I'm actually looking. I can't find a Red Claw Full Auto for December, so I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying I can't find it.
Oh, I thought it's November.
I think they just had it. I think they literally just had it.
Oh, they might have.
But I don't think there's really anything throughout December, and I think that January is pretty empty too, because the LVO kind of comes up at the end of January.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't surprise me to see some LVO practice in the first few weeks. But
where are we at? It was yesterday.
Yeah, that checks out. Yeah, I think that was their 4th full auto, if I remember right. So, yep, I believe it was the 4th. Could have been the 5th. That belt of theirs is starting to get some names on it. So,
I think both the Horsemen's are on it now, which is a treat.
They are. It's a father-son duo there. So, they came out to Hallowtide and they were great. They had a good time, I think, too. So.
They're both funny to play against. I played against both of them. They're both good players. And as Scotty would say, they're both pretty nice guys, pretty good guys.
No, I say they're nice guys. I don't say that about a lot of people though. So it's actually a compliment.
One of the things I like playing about them the most is that they're very loose. Like, they play tight, they play a good game, but they have fun while they're doing it. They're not afraid to crack a joke, and it's okay to want to play a competitive game of Warhammer. But let's have fun while we're doing it,
Absolutely.
That's the best way,
really
man.
nice.
Well, and that's kind of what we encourage at Saga and at the events that get held at the Fraternal Order of Eagles, which is where Saga is based, like Hallowtide and like Iron Within that Bill did just a couple months ago, right? And to some extent, it can be said that the beer hammer maybe helps a bit with that. But some guys, it's more than just that, obviously. But that's always something that I think should be encouraged as well.
Fuck, Scotty, do you want to play a game of Shothammer on Thursday?
Ooh.
No, I don't.
Come on!
Don't even worry about your reserves, man.
I already have 1 or 2 poorly functioning organs. I don't know if I need any more.
Well, I tried. Open invite anyone who wants to play Shothammer Thursday night. I'm off Friday, so let's make it happen.
That's what for somebody who's, I know you're very invested in basing. Here's a thought: shot glass bases.
Well, you get to see over some of that terrain now. That's fucking useless with obscuring, but
well,
maybe for heresy.
Hey, there you go. Well, and we should also mention that on the event list, of course, it's not 40k, but Bill, you've got your doubles event coming right up here.
That is true. It is true. On the 27th, it's a
2 weeks away.
Yeah, Horus Heresy doubles event. Should be a lot of fun. 1,500 points per player. Actually, I think we're at 20 people now, which is nice. Especially for Heresy, it's kind of a weird thing. Like, with a lot of notice, you can get a lot of pull. We got some guys coming from Calgary, which is awesome. In April, I think there's going to be a bit of an influx. Some of the guys from BC and the States want to come down and play, so should be a lot of fun. Overall, just lots of gaming happening. Lots of events, pickup games, constant steady stream from GW just on new releases. The biggest one obviously was just the Astra Militarum big box set that dropped for pre-order.
Hey,
so
on that,
it's
what do
crazy.
you think's the coolest model or the ones they just dropped?
The coolest model?
Single coolest new guard model. Which one strikes your fancy?
Honestly, like, I'm a big fan of the Rogel Dorn tank. To me, that's kind of screaming like a Patton. I really like that style. It just looks very overkill in 40k. It's basically a Baneblade fucked to Lehman Russ, and that's what you get. But it was nice. Like, it's a nice kit overall.
Hey, without looking,
Right.
take a guess. How many guns are on that tank?
How many guns? I'm gonna say there's probably like
7.
10.
10. Scotty, how many guns on that tank without looking?
I'm saying 7.
Okay, we got 2 sponsons, main turret, some sort of stormbolter up top, so 1, 2, 3, 4, like a vindicator cannon, and a gun in front. 2 guns in front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7. That motherfucker.
How do I do it?
He said not to look. You know.
Fuck,
Are
that's
you
a
accusing
lot.
me of cheating?
No, I don't use the C word.
I would never cheat.
Well, I'll see you next Thursday. We'll see who
Yeah.
cheats.
Ciente.
I only cheat to get draws.
Oh my god.
Oh man.
I would like, honestly, like, looking through them, I would say that it's I hate to say it, it's a tie between the Kasserkins and the Rough Riders. I do love the Rogel Dorn. I think it looks great. There's something about it that just feels a little bit not guard enough for me. I think it might just be it needs to be a little bit more angular, a little bit more sharp edges to really feel guard to me, you know? But that's just kind of, I think, the old school mentality of it, and obviously they're updating the look a little bit. But I really like the new Rough Riders. They remind me a lot of Admech Cerberus Raiders. They've got very much the same look.
Call them what they're called. They're the Yihari.
The Yihari, yeah,
Yihari,
absolutely.
Yep.
And the Kasserkin, just, they feel amazing to me. I hear that for both Rough Riders and Kasserkin, you'll probably be seeing them on the table a lot too, apparently.
Are they really good?
The Rough Riders, I've been able to see enough of the book to be like, this is great. The Kasserkin, I've seen enough of the book to be like, they're definitely good, and from what I'm hearing, there's some pretty spicy combos that you can pull off with them. But the looks of the models are, like, they really, for me, speak to that Special Forces kind of look, and I love them. I think they look great.
Yeah. How about you,
Well,
Arthur?
You know, for me, it's a tie between like those anti-tank guns.
Oh, the field artillery.
Oh,
I don't know. Like, they already have some stuff that's kind of like that with the heavy weapons teams. But those anti-tank guns kind of complete that infantry aesthetic, and if I wasn't getting into Tau, like, that might do it, you know. But that new Lord Solar, I don't know what it is.
That pomp
See,
motherfucker on the horse.
He's a pretty model, but he does not look like guard to me at all.
No, he doesn't. Well, he does in the artwork, but the model, it's the head. The head fucking sucks.
He looks like he's a Age of Sigmar guy, you know?
You know what? His model is going to be so fucking pushed that every guard player is going to be playing one of them.
Oh, probably,
Yeah.
but
So, like it or not, but it'll be the Morven Ball of Imperial Guard, and you're going to have to play it.
Just do a head swap, and you're in the clear.
Yeah. That's all. Fucking, it's GW has outdone themselves on this release. They've somehow managed to make, like, regular guardsmen look good. Regular fucking Lehman Russes look good. No one's ever looked at a Lehman Russ and said, "Damn, that thing is awesome." But people
No.
look at this tank and they say, "Damn, that thing is awesome," right?
Fucking
and and that's true for a lot of, like, even that Sentinel.
The
No one's ever
Sentinel
looked at a
looks
Sentinel
awesome.
and been like, "Holy fuck! I wish I was in Star Wars killing Ewoks right now, but that thing fucking does it. That thing's awesome.
Yeah, the new range is definitely going to be red hot, I think.
There's been some very subtle changes too in their color schemes, which is pretty normal. But I think they've really popped. That was kind of something that was selling it for me when I was looking at the models. I was like, because I mean, a lot of them are still done in like the the Cadian colors or whatever, but I think they've gone for a little bit darker of a green, and the hand colors they're using are a little different too. And
yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, and it actually, to me anyway, it really popped to me. I had this same discussion with Votan actually when they launched. A lot of people said that they didn't really love the looks of them, but from what I've seen of people on the internet painting them and stuff, I kept looking at them and being like, man, everybody paints these better than GW did. And I think that it went back to they just had weird colors for them. Like the colors they chose for the Votan models, the specific leagues or whatever, just they didn't look that good on those models. But then when somebody started putting their own take on it, specifically, I think they look better in some brighter colors. I was like, wow, those models actually, like this exact same model looks so much better, just changing the palette. And with the guard, I think that they did that too. Like you mentioned, Lehman Russ, it's an ugly, ugly look that I think I've seen Lehman Russ is painted in over the years, most of which are GW stock standard palettes, and their new palette for them just that darker forest green looks a lot better.
I often thought that GW kind of shit the bed when it came to the Gene Sealer cults too, with like that weird gray.
Agreed.
And people often paint them in like purples and whatnot, and the purples look fucking fantastic. And I think the same thing could be said of the Leagues of Wotan, because when you look at the Leagues of Wotan, they're done in that like it's like this green, but it's like they also have gray as a subcolor, and it just doesn't quite do it.
It's like they took Sons of Horus and made it worse.
They tried to, yeah.
It looks like they painted them with contrast paints, which is fine.
Maybe.
But they picked the wrong colors. They should paint these like you'd paint any Space Marine.
Yeah, agreed.
But they probably didn't want
to like that.
They probably didn't want to put that like, blue or yellow or red on the box art.
I mean, I guess, but
would have looked good though.
I mean, if you can throw some Blood Angel icons on them, why not?
Yeah.
Well, what were the colors of the old dwarves? I guess they would have been like gold or silver, right?
Squats? Oh, fuck.
Yeah,
no,
they
like fantasy
been,
dwarves.
Oh, well, it depends, right? A lot of them, it was a lot of golds and bronze and silvers, and then you'd have like blue or little red sleeves on their models and shit from fantasy.
A little bit of the best color in the world, tin bits in there.
Oh, yeah. Solid. I know when GW did their big release drip on one of the their weekenders or whatever it was, and they were showing all these models online. I was looking at these and I was like, I've seen these models before, and a lot of people, were telling me like, no, dude, these are brand new, and I'm like, yeah, I know, but I've seen them. Like, we've seen them somewhere, and they're actually in a sneak peek of when Ursula Krieg got released.
Okay.
And if you look at this grainy picture of Ursula Krieg, she's right in the front, but everyone else in the background of that picture, those are all the new guard models. They're just kind of pixelated and a little bit shitty. You're like, but you can actually make out, like, I remember seeing the Sentinel and the Imperial Troopers and some of the field guns, and I was like, oh, what the fuck? Like, those look new.
Yeah.
And
I remember that too. Yeah.
Like, they're legit, they're new. So.
GW's been doing that lately, though. That's kind of
it's nice.
For a while.
I like that they do that. I like that they do their own leaks. I think they need to do more of that, because then it makes people who break the NDAs for play testing or anything like that less prevalent.
Well, and their shroud of secrecy, sometimes it makes sense, but sometimes I think they can be a little stupid about it. You got to hype your own train a bit,
Absolutely.
Speaking of hype, we do have still, 40k, the future of 40k right now is a hilarious cauldron, because we still have a couple of things coming up pretty soon here, like the Guard Codex, like the World Eaters Codex.
Is that it for codexes?
Then that's the thing, is is that it for codexes? Because, of course, then the talk shifts to 10th edition, which there's not, like, there's some rumors out there, but there's not a hard and fast kind of talk from GW about that happening or when it's happening. Clearly, it'll be next year, but when exactly? But the interesting talk goes around this thing where GW loves to release their new edition in the summer. World Eaters can't be further away than January. I mean, maybe February, but probably not.
January is a real
That
shit
leaves a
month
lot
for
of
release
time.
stuff. I think they don't
always
typically
have a
release stuff.
January release.
Do they?
They always got one. Oh yeah. They don't have
They don't-
December releases usually.
Nothing after like December 10th. Like anything
Yeah.
after that is like their box sets and whatnot.
Just box set deals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which
It's-
are looking pretty fucking snazzy, might I add.
Some of them are
Yeah, but
actually
there's not a
pretty
Cal
nice. They're pretty nice.
Actually, from what I understand, there's not a Xenos one at all this year. It's all Imperials and Chaos.
That's all you need.
Coincidence? I think not.
But
But
I
anyway.
don't know. I hope that 10th does not get dropped next summer. I'd like to see them go buck for a year with every codex out, and they can just do some updates, tweaks here and there, let the system play, and then maybe 2024 drop 10th, do a full hit the reset button. I think that would be pretty sweet, considering if they are pulling some of their, what the rumors say, they're pulling some inspiration from Heresy and the reaction system. I think giving that another year of, essentially playtesting to see where you can make tweaks and improve it would just be beneficial.
I'd like some
Well, I
more
think-
operations for stratagems. Like, does the active player have to take a stratagem first? Can you some stratagems that say use the stratagem when an opponent uses a stratagem?
What if stratagems go away and it's just reactions?
Good.
You
Well,
get like a 6 core and then 6 codex reactions. That's it.
Yeah,
it's all fun and
I mean,
games
they
till
could-
Space Marines gets theirs, right?
Yeah.
Well, they'll be the
They
first
could
one.
cut the stratagems list to probably a quarter of what it is now in pretty much every book, and it would be fine. I do think, like, to speak both to what you're saying there, Bill, and also kind of what I mentioned a little bit earlier, like, I'm not opposed to that idea. I don't think that this is what GW would do. That, they make their money selling rules and selling models, and I think that for sure we'll see a lot of rules releases next year, one way or another. If they don't do the edition itself, I'm sure there'll be a big campaign or something, which a lot of people are ambivalent about, but it is what it is. But I do think that with the way that matched play runs in 40k right now, with the release every 6 months of a new book for matched play, currently, of course, we're in Nephilim, that there is an opportunity, like you're saying, to kind of shake things up, every 6 months, without necessarily having to introduce new codexes. And the game is very bloated on codexes. That's part of the problem of 40k, is that there's this constant march of new books, and you literally don't get to have them all play at the same time before you're resetting your rules, somewhat by design. But yeah, like, honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to that idea from a philosophical perspective. And any changes that you wanted to make to the game, you could make through the matched playbooks, as we've seen them make big changes exactly like that in Nakband and in Nephilim.
Very true.
So, you know what? I would, I'll write an email to GW first thing tomorrow morning, suggest you for their rules design team, and we can go from there.
A or B, are we seeing this? Are we seeing a new edition come July, or are we seeing a year's worth of Psychic Awakening 2.0?
Yeah.
I'm going to go
I-
Psychic Awakening 2.0.
And then what? Next July we see a new release.
Yeah.
What's their big summer release going to be this next year then? Because they always
Well,
have a big summer release. It's
they
not
do.
going to be Age of Sigmar. We just had an Age of Sigmar edition. It's not going to be Heresy. We just had that.
It's the return of Epic.
Battlefleet Gothic.
Fuck! Holy shit! Oh my god! Battlefleet Gothic.
Buddy,
That's a
I'd
system
be
I
in.
would spend $500 on and never play.
Do you know how many
but you-
birds you
but
can
the
get for
models.
$500?
That gets you the entire Battlefleet Gothic. They actually, GW, no, to be clear, they actually have specified, and they backed it up with their recent rules releases, that they do not want to do rules, like matched play rules, in campaigns anymore. So like a Psychic Awakening is apparently, according to them, not on the table. Their last few campaigns books, they've been trying to separate the rules and their crusade stuff and the idea of campaign stuff, so that it's not as much of a hassle with this idea of having to have 6 books to play your army. They said they've heard our complaints about that.
They say that, Scotty, but actions speak louder than words, right?
But then they just
They
drop
backed it up
out
with their
new
last
shit.
few releases. I am very interested to see what goes on. For me, it's again, I would love if they delayed 10th, but I do wonder if they don't put 10th, like a 10th edition release, if it doesn't come, March or April, which would be weird because, like you said, they want to do a big summer release. What do they do to fill the gap? And I think that there's a lot of chatter about that right now, and there's not a lot of clarity because there just are not enough. Like, there is maybe the only thing that I've seen that has a little bit of legs to it is the idea of doing another new updated version of the Space Marine book, which
we haven't got
I
Space
could
Marines
kinda
2.0
understand.
yet. You're right.
Yeah,
That could be
happen. I
that.
could get
No, that's that fucking Blood Angels release that's rumored. That's what that's going to be. That's going to be you're going to have
Well,
Blood Angels
that's
Primer. That's
rumored
not
as-
Sanguinus.
That's rumored for like a 10th edition box set, though.
Yeah,
No,
is it-
that's there's no way. That has to be the summer release.
Yeah, but like, what about a spring release? That's what I'm saying. Is what fills the hole in between World Eaters and 10th? If we assume 10th for, say, July and World Eaters for January or February.
Oh, you're right. Well, when's Warhammer Fest? March?
Oh, they just did tickets on that. Tickets just dropped not long ago.
Well, is it March UK time? Like, what is that in North America?
The fuck. Yeah, I think it's March is when Warhammer Fest is.
They did say that they were doing some big announcements there. Would not shock me if they announced 10th edition there, but they announced it for when, right? Is kind of the question.
Well, if so, can we effectively say that World Eaters are not not December?
Oh yeah, for sure. Guard aren't even out for another month, so
So like our Guard like November, December.
yeah, it's kind of a weird one. It's the same as kind of like the Orc Codex back in the day, a couple months ago, last year, whatever that was. Where like it seems to be like they're doing some release like right away and some more release a little bit down the line. But the
Wave
like
one,
the
wave
book is
two.
not. The book is it's like the book itself is not officially released for a little while yet. But it's also, you can get some of the Guard stuff like right away, right coming up soon here. So,
Mm.
but
Interesting.
it's definitely not past, say, February for World Eaters.
Probably like they're not going to fuck with the LVO schedule. So
Nope.
oh man,
Nope.
yeah.
It's
I guess
I
you're
know,
right.
right? It's
If
kind of
the
like
seasons
whoa,
pick up.
what's going on here, right? Like what fills the gap? What fills the schedule ussy of GW?
Well, and I mean, there are going to be some pressures from the shareholders because this year was down over COVID's year, right? So there's going to be
Well,
an expectation to keep releasing. So
maybe
regardless
that's
of whether or not we want 10th edition, we might see that come up anyways.
Maybe in the spring, GW releases a plague that shuts down half the planet, so that their retail starts to skyrocket again.
Settle
Everybody's back at
down,
home with their
Danielle
models.
Smith. Settle down.
I'll be launching my political campaign next week.
You'll fucking be a rock star in Medicine Hat Brooks.
Oh my.
You bet. You bet.
Well, that feels almost like a good spot.
It
For
does.
a wrap,
It does.
so-
We'll leave that. Honestly, legit, I would love to hear, especially if you consider yourself a person who maybe has heard a thing or two on the internet or from someone. If you're listening to this podcast and you have some ideas or some info you'd love to drop about what you think's going to go on next kind of spring, early summer, as far as GW and 40k goes, put it in the comments or send it directly to Bill's email or show up outside Bill's house and tell him early in the morning, whatever
Yeah.
it takes. I'd love to hear about it. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, before we wrap, Scotty, you said you had some tips for basing.
I do actually. The number one basing tip I ever got was that you shouldn't let Arthur anywhere near your models to judge your bases because it'll just make you feel bad.
Heads unbowed, buddy. Heads unbowed.
It's
Heads
unbowed.
unbowed, bases
Bases
unpainted.
unpainted.
I'll get Bill a clip of that for the thumbnail.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank
Bill,
you everybody for tuning in. Scott, Arthur, big thanks for you guys jumping on once again. Scott for
No
the
problem.
first time. It was good just to talk shop and what's new.
Yeah, anytime you guys talking 40k, I'd love to hang out. I probably can't shut up about it, to be honest with you. So
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the chance to air my grievances about Scott's fucking unpainted bases anytime I get.
Beautiful.
I thought he was just mad because he hadn't won any tournaments, but now he has, and he's still like this. So
Outrageous. Awesome. Catch you guys next time.
yeah, thanks for having us, Bill.